I've been off my Naruto game for a minute here, so I've been ready to get back with it. And I told y'all I had a spicy video ready in the oven to come out for y'all. And not only do I have the meal prepared for y'all, but I have two of some of the master chefs of the community. I got both Sage and Virtue on the channel with me again. Say it, everybody.
Hello, what's it? Yeah, definitely. You already know how it is. Throw up that Itachi cooking video where we're gonna be cooking up a nice fresh meal for you. Got a pretty cool topic today, so thank you for having us on the channel. It's always good to get the all-star team together.
So today, if y'all haven't seen the title and thumbnail, should make it obvious. Naruto versus Sasuke throughout the manga and anime. That way we cover all our P's and Q's. But yes, so it's going to be Naruto versus Sasuke across the timeline at different points in the series. Now, when we say different points in every point in the series, we're not talking about like when they're out of the womb. But just to make it as short and sweet as we possibly can, the way we are out here for 2.5 to 3 hours, like a Lord of the Rings movie, we're going to be just doing like at the end of each respective arc. That way, their abilities will kind of accumulate throughout the arc to where we can decide who would win between the two of them at the end of each arc. So for instance, let's just, hop right into it. The end of the Land of Waves. So this is just, everything they've accumulated up until after they fight Zabuza and Haku. And I'll say this right from the jump, like from narratively, Sasuke is that wall and goal for Naruto to overcome, right? That's the whole point of his character. So Sasuke is narratively, better and stronger than Naruto, evident by the bell test and his fight with Haku. Like Sasuke does outperform base Naruto in both those fights. Now, the only two ways that I could think of off the top of my head that Naruto, one, the first is not going to happen more often than not. I think we can agree is if he gets the Nine Tails, baby QB mode, whatever you want to call it, the QB high, if you want to call it that, where he taps into the Nine Tails mode for just a split second and just kind of curb stomps Haku. That's like the only other way that unless Sasuke just rage baits him bad enough, that's probably not going to happen. But the only other way I could see it is if he gets a mental amp like he did against Mizuki and summons countless upon countless shadow clones. I know Sasuke is a good, taijutsu user, evident in this fight with Kakashi in the bell test, and he's got the fireball jutsu and whatnot, and he's got the Sharingan, but I don't know, there's a part of me that feels like with a lot of those clones, because unless Mizuki is just the absolute trash of a Chunin, like, so there's sometimes I wonder if he's like an actual high Genin at best, and maybe like again, I think the only way I could really see Naruto coming out on top is if he gets a mental amp like he did against Mizuki and just summons countless shadow clones to overwhelm Sasuke. And even then, you could probably argue that if Sasuke were to lose, then he might be able to take out a good few clones before he loses. But otherwise, unless the fight gets that far, I think Sasuke wins more often than not.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think you could maybe try to give some benefit of the doubt to Sasuke, like under those two scenarios. I do think, generally speaking, he just dominates. Since we're taking the anime into account, that means we're definitely taking the anime profile guides into account, which specifically state that he's already at the level of a Chunin while he fights the Demon Brothers, which they're also Chunin, so that makes sense. But even if you give him the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, he's like Chunin level, it's like, well, if you take into account those mental amps or like the Kurama amp, Naruto is like a whole tier above a dude who's a Chunin. So yeah. If you do think that that's where that goes, then yeah, Naruto would slam. But I do think like 9 times out of 10, Naruto is not going to get that mental amp. He's definitely not tapping into the Kurama chakra, because that's something that, at least at that point in the series, is something he can only really tap into whenever he's just massively enraged. So I don't really think either of those are going to be massive factors. If one of them is going to be a factor at all, it would be the mental amp side of things. But we know like Sasuke is shown to like beat him up in the academy regularly. He's shown narratively to massively outperform Naruto, like even like Lightning said in the bell test. So I think at this point in the series, it's pretty clear that Sasuke is the superior of the two, at least generally speaking. And if we're taking them at the end of the Land of Waves, Sasuke also has the Sharingan now. So that is going to give him a massive advantage on top of the advantage he already had previously. So yeah, I do think 9 times out of 10, Sasuke's probably winning this.
You brought up the anime profile guides, and The first anime profile guides, which covers up to episode 37, actually notes in the Anbu mission report that Sasuke has the highest ability among this entire graduate year. So this could also allude to the fact that he's just blatantly stronger than Naruto is at this specific point. But one thing I think kind of has to be taken into account is their general performances throughout this arc, because this arc is narratively pivoting the two against one another. Like, you can look at the tree, like the tree training exercises, and it's like, yes, there is that one point where Naruto, I believe he stays out all night and then surpasses Sasuke's mark. But then Sasuke is just standing upside down on the tree, like catches them, you know what I mean? Like total aura flex on him. And so Sasuke is outperforming there. He outperforms in the Haku fight and is even like matching Haku in many different levels. And many people want to say that Haku's Kakashi level. This really just isn't true, at least in these forms. And it's more so that Sasuke is actually like a rival here. And even like when both are completely damaged, so let's say this fight between the two goes the extra mile, goes the distance, whatever you want to say, I think it's pretty clear actually that Sasuke should have the edge, because whenever both are impaled with all the Senbon, Sasuke can actually still stand up and, you know, continue to want to fight. And Sage mentioned the Sharingan, which is more so a permanent continuity of like an amp in comparison to something like the Nine Tails Chakra or that Mental Amp, which aren't going to be able to come out regularly in the, you know, the 10 out of 10 matches. Whereas Sasuke Sharingan could come out every single time. So I think it's pretty clear that Sasuke should have the advantage here. And I would probably give him the win in the Land of Waves. And I think that's what they would agree with too. However, just coming out of the Land of Waves, literally within basically a single chapter, we transition over to the Chunin exams, which gets a bit more interesting in terms of the Naruto case, in terms of at least the end of this arc. And the reason why I say this is we know that Naruto actually goes on to train, and he does get some amps with the Nine Tails Chakra. So here's my thing. Sasuke should still be above Naruto. Just blatantly, should be above Naruto. And there's no real arguments to suggest otherwise, unless you are to suggest that Neji is massively above the rest of this, you know, entire year and all the other characters in the Chunin exams. And then the Nine Tails Chakra can then rival him. Although I'm not one to really subscribe to those, and we're still stuck in this same, well, if he gets this amp, which could come out, then he might win. And you have a lot of could've, would've, should've, might, maybe, you know. For Sasuke, you have the more empirical evidence that says, well, he has the Chidori, he has the Curse Mark, he has the Sharingan, you know, he has the Precog, he uses his jutsu better, he's better at using the fireball to space things out and then, you know, create like a flank to then dive off the tree to clash with Gaara with his Chidori and stuff. He's surpassing his own limits and stuff like that with the Chidori, whereas Naruto really isn't by this point. So I think it's more so that Sasuke is a similar case as opposed to the last one. But if you do want to give the Nine Tails amp, then Naruto might have a really good chance, depending on how you want to put the assertions around with Neji. But yeah, I think Sasuke should definitely win this one.
Yeah, I probably agree with that, honestly, because I was telling Virtue earlier before we started recording, it's like, okay, how often would... Because, like, the only reason that Naruto was able to get his Nine Tails Chakra in the fights with Neji and Gaara was because he exhausted a large amount, if not all, of his normal chakra in order to do so. And so the fight would obviously have to be prolonged a decent bit before we get to that point. And so it becomes the question is, can Naruto hold out for that long until Sasuke wraps up the fight? Because if you remember, like, even after the Neji fight where Naruto had gained some amount of control over the Nine Tails Chakra, he takes one look at Sasuke's Chidori and starts to really get nervous. Like, Shikamaru even notices it from a distance. He's like, oh wow, like Naruto's, you know, thinking he's too strong now. And like, this was after Naruto had trained with Jiraiya, trained to use the summoning, and he still felt like Sasuke could still probably beat him. At least that's what's implied. Now, obviously, we go on to later learn that that's not the case when it comes to the Nine Tails Chakra and the summoning jutsu, which by extension, yes, if Naruto were to plug the controller in and just summon Gamamota, Sasuke's getting cooked. But again, it's if he gets the Nine Tails Chakra and if Gamamota listens to him, you know, Now, I will say, is something similar as the last round, is because he did summon a lot of clones with his normal chakra, so that, because even Sasuke was surprised. Like, Sasuke took one look at those clones, it's like it never ceases to surprise him how many clones Naruto can make. So You could argue that if Naruto summoned just as many clones as he did against Gaara, that he still would overwhelm Sasuke. But with the Chidori, like I said, if we're plugging the controller in, and like even if Sasuke doesn't aim for his heart, which would be in character, like he'd still be able to damage Naruto considerably enough to where he'd probably would end the fight before it got to the Nine Tails chakra. So
yeah, I mean, I think there are just a few key points here. Number one, Naruto doesn't have anything to clash with the Chidori at this point in time. So if the Chidori comes out, it's probably GG. He doesn't have the Rasengan yet, so if Sasuke brings that out, I mean, he just doesn't have anything in his kit that can actually match that. As far as the Nine Tails chakra, something that people tend to forget is the fact that with like the Nine Tails chakra in the Neji fight, he literally never taps into it until he gets his chakra shut down. And he's basically like, man, if only I had another source of chakra I could pull from. And then he's like, oh, wait. And then he taps into the Nine Tails chakra. So it's not even something that he in character like thinks to do outside of very particular circumstances. And then in the other time that he uses the Nine Tails chakra right after this, which by the way, like end of the Chunin exams, right, is like chapter 114. So that's when Konoha Crush begins, which is technically a different arc. So if we're only taking stuff up to there, I would say Sasuke for sure wins. But if we take things after that, then basically you just end up in this really ambiguous area where it's like Sasuke has the Chidori, he has the curse mark, he fights like 4 different people leading up to the Gaara fight, so he's already kind of fatigued. He's also fresh off of his fight with Gaara where he uses the Chidori, which he can only do twice in one day without tapping into the curse mark. So he's massively fatigued in his second with Gaara to begin with, and then Naruto comes in and kind of saves the day in one of the most blatant examples of a mental amp in the entire series. He literally thinks back to what Haku said to him when Haku says, when you're trying to protect someone that you love, you can be as strong as you need to be, and then he gets as strong as he needs to be. So it's one of the most blatant examples of a mental amp in my opinion. I did a whole video on this, and so I do think that, generally speaking, Sasuke is going to be able to dominate this fight. He's got the Chidori, which amps his speed. Naruto doesn't have anything to clash with it. He has the curse mark, which can take him beyond his physicals that he normally has. He's got the Sharingan, which obviously gives him the precog. And then he also just like, I think at this point in time is still overall more skilled than Naruto is. And so even if Naruto, tries to use clones and stuff like that, he's probably cooked. The only way that I think that Naruto actually wins this is if he taps into that Nine Tails chakra, which, as I established earlier, is not really in character for him to do on a, in a normal scenario. Now, that being said, though, I do think that once you get through, the search for Tsunade and the Sasuke retrieval arc, and then get all the way to the end of part 1, things do get a lot more interesting. And one recurring theme you're going to see in this video is I end up getting some of the more difficult ones to go over to open up. But this one is super contentious because the way that their fight kind of goes down at the end of part 1 leaves a lot to be desired in terms of who's actually stronger. There are arguments on both sides where, yet Sasuke does win that fight, for sure. And I would argue that he controls it for a good portion of the time, outside of when Naruto gets amps on top of what they already had and takes the lead. But then Sasuke just matches that with amps of his own. So by the time we get to the end of it, it's like Naruto's shoulder is kind of out of commission, so we can all really use one of his hands. He's not actually, in my estimation, trying to kill Sasuke there. He intentionally leaves a scratch on Sasuke's forehead because of what Sasuke says, and as opposed to like going for an actual, finishing blow, whereas Sasuke does actually go for a finishing blow. At least that's how it appears to me. So it is a bit ambiguous, but I do think overall, in my opinion, if I had to give an edge to either of them, it would be 51-49, probably Sasuke. The reason I say this is because I do just think that with what they have in their arsenals, Sasuke's abilities at this point in time, with the Sharingan precog, with the superior skill, with the curse mark amp on top of everything he has, I do think he has the power to match Naruto. He's got the skill that surpasses Naruto. He's got a jutsu that can clash with Naruto's strongest attack. And I think that tactically he's far more sound. So for me, I would lean Sasuke here, but I do think it can go either way.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I pretty much agree with this one. And this one's going to transition right into part 2 in Shippuden. And obviously we're going to skip over the, Kage rescue arc because, Sasuke didn't have any screen time in there. So we're going to go right into the Tenchi Bridge arc. And this one is about as blatant as it could possibly get. Naruto worked for 2.5 to 3 years and Sasuke still towers him. Substantially, actually. I mean,
yeah.
At best, you can get Naruto to maybe like low Jonin level, but Sasuke is like Kage level right here, y'all. Like, it's ridiculous. This is pre Orochimaru absorbed, and Sasuke was just toying with them. Like, Sasuke didn't even break a sweat, he actually had to ask, is Kakashi here? And as soon as he heard, like, no, he's like, all right, game on. So there, it's like, again, like how the beginning of the series is in part 1, Sasuke is still that goal that Naruto has to overcome, only to a more gruesome degree.
I mean, I totally agree. I think when it comes to the comparisons between Naruto and Sasuke in this arc, you're going to find more similarities in terms of how they perform in comparison to this heavy Sasuke and a 4 Tails Naruto or a 3 Tails Naruto. Like, you're going to find more comparisons there, especially like you can look at, for example, like the wood style. The wood style is able to restrain, 4 Tails Naruto, but then Sasuke's blasting right through it, stuff like that. So there's more comparisons too, like there's chapter art that kind of puts them as equal forms, at least Sasuke and Curse Mark and whatnot. So we don't know much about Sasuke in this arc, and this will be a theme going into the next one too, in terms of how much we know about Sasuke in comparison to how strong he actually is. And so keep your ears for that. But I will say for this one, it's pretty concrete that Sasuke is the superior to just Naruto. I mean, basically, as soon as they leave the Tenchi Bridge reconnaissance to go report to Kakashi, Naruto basically just says as much.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I think that it's fairly clear that if we're just taking the manga into account, that Sasuke, and even the data books, that Sasuke just absolutely ragdolls here. He like straight up blitzes Naruto, and there's nothing he can really do about it. Now, since we are taking the anime into account as well, there's a really interesting statement from Jiraiya where he implies that the only reason why Naruto got like embarrassed the way that he did is because he was still suffering from the effects of the Nine Tails chakra. So if you do take that into account, you would say like, oh, well, maybe they're closer than what people think. But that doesn't mean that Naruto's actually on Sasuke's level. And especially when there's so much overwhelming evidence from not only the manga, but also the data books, the birthday columns, the Kuzuina scrolls, like all of these different pieces of actual manga canon material that lean in the direction of Sasuke just having a chasm between him and Naruto in terms of overall power. I would say that that's the most consistent interpretation, even if you take the Jiraiya statement into account. Yeah, I do think we're all in agreement here. Naruto is just not quite on that level and can't really hang with somebody on the level of Sasuke, even if you take that statement into account and you say like maybe that he would do better against him than he did there, but it doesn't really matter here at the end of the day. But that leads us into the next section. So this one, I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion, I think, but I think we can find some common ground here. So at the end of the Akatsuki suppression arc, whenever we have the Kakuzu and Hidan fight and Naruto's Rasen Shuriken training and all these different things, right? There are some implications here for both sides. So on one side, we have like some imagery that suggests that, Sasuke is, standing above Naruto still in the Kuzuina scrolls. We also have a statement that says that Naruto was looking at Sasuke, or looking in his mind's eye at Sasuke, essentially, who's still beyond his reach. So that would suggest that Sasuke is still above Naruto. However, there is an interesting statement from Kakashi that could suggest that Naruto actually eclipsed Sasuke, or at least the earlier version of Sasuke that we were talking about in the previous arc. And basically, Kakashi, whenever he finds out about what happened at Tenchi Bridge, well, Naruto says, Sasuke's too strong. And Kakashi says, well, looks like you're just going to have to get stronger than that. And Naruto's like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And he says, well, basically, we're just going to have to accelerate our training. And I'm going to teach you a new jutsu. You could surpass, you'll get that strong, as strong as you need to be to bring Sasuke back, and maybe even surpass me. So there's sort of a hierarchy listed here by Kakashi, where Kakashi is at the top, Sasuke is in the middle, and Naruto is below that, at least as it stands there. But then Naruto masters the Rasen Shuriken, and is able to, at least with the Nine Tails chakra, not in the way that he does with Sage Mode. And at that point in time, because he's using like Kakuzu as a test in order to see if he can actually get to the level that he's trying to get to, it sort of narratively implies, in my opinion, that Naruto has caught up to Sasuke, at least the version of Sasuke that we see in the Tenchi Bridge arc. Now, there are some contentions with this that I know that Virtue will bring up in terms of like the current version of Sasuke there, in terms of like the kind of training that he had done, and you give the same kind of time frame to both of them to train, and maybe Sasuke get stronger than he was prior, which I think makes sense. But I do think that with the intel that Kakashi would have on both how strong Sasuke should be based on Yamato's intel, also taking into account the curse marks effects because he would know how that affects somebody who's using it, and then also taking into account how quickly Sasuke had developed with his training, I do think you can make a reasonable argument that Kakashi might be taking all of this into account with the training, but it's just kind of too ambiguous for me, so I would still give a slight edge to Sasuke here, but I do think they're probably at least close to one another, and you could even argue that maybe they are equals, but the out of reach kind of thing is in regards to Naruto being able to actually bring Sasuke back, not bring Sasuke down. For me, I would say, honestly, that they're probably on a similar level, with maybe Naruto having a slight edge, maybe Sasuke having a slight edge, but generally on the same tier.
Alright, so I'll say this, and I talked to both Sage and Virtue before we start recording, is that I think the biggest factor that might apply here might be which jutsu you think would be better, Kirin or the Rasen Shuriken. And because I've seen a lot of people go back and forth on this. Now, realistically, if we're talking about like how the elements work within the series, wind style should be able to beat out lightning style. I don't know if that really applies to a lightning jutsu as big and strong as Kirin, but if we were to try to take it, because Yamato was convinced that it doesn't matter what lightning style Sasuke uses, the Rasen Shuriken should still be able to combat it. But that actually just might apply to if both jutsus connect to each other. But if Sasuke were to hit Naruto before Naruto points it into the direction of Kirin, it might just cook him before Naruto has a chance to do anything. And with how fast Kirin is, I don't know. Now, it depends on how you take Kirin. If you take Kirin at its worst, where Sasuke actually has to set up Kirin, with the thunderstorm, then yeah, by all means, he may not have the time to do so. But if you go off this Tenchi Bridge arc section where he just makes a few hand signs and is actually able to drop it, then Naruto is probably cooked before anything can, be done. And like Sage has said, there's a really good chance that even if they were to go toe-to-toe with each other and you plug the controller in, still in character, Naruto probably will be fighting with their strength, whereas Sasuke is a little bit more ambiguous. There's a bit of back and forth between a lot of the fandom of whether or not he was actually going to drop Kirin, and if that's the case, will he actually fight with killer intent? Then there's the other side where people are convinced that he actually was going to drop it, and so he will be fighting with killer intent. So if that is the case, yes, I still, narratively and objectively, I still say Sasuke is the superior. Rasen Shuriken definitely has the capacity to kill Sasuke. I think in terms of strength, I think Naruto has caught Sasuke, but in overall versatility and strategic, input, I think Sasuke still holds the edge. But
stylistically, the Kirin is actually much better suited in this scenario because the Rasen Shuriken at this point in time is only a close range attack.
Right.
And so if Naruto has to clash with the Kirin with the Rasen Shuriken, what's going to happen is he's going to get caught up in the explosion, which is not going to be good, right? So
if you have Choji commenting on, he's like, when I heard Rasen Shuriken, I thought you were going to boomerang and not smack him head on.
Yeah, exactly. So I do think that if it comes down to a Rasen Shuriken versus Kirin clash, then Sasuke has a definitive edge there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even if you want to say the Kirin that's going to be used here won't be the size of the one that was used, against Itachi. It's okay, take it half the size. That entire thing was the size of your hideout. The Kirin is gigantic. It's not like a lightning bolt. It's like a thunderstruck from Zeus. This is a serious bolt. As Sage mentioned, I have some contentions, but me and Sage basically stand on the same area with a few linguistic differences in how we word our things about Sasuke and Naruto at the end of this arc. So the Kizuna Earth Scroll, which is probably the thing I would point to. I do have a video where I really go heavy on this in Kakashi versus Sasuke, if you guys want to check that out. But,
really
if I really had to put it, a little tighter, the Kizuna Earth Scroll says with absolute confidence in the new jutsu he acquired through intense training, which is rhetoric we can come back to. He volunteers to go in alone, wielding the technique born from his full potential, Naruto sees the battle as not just a mission, but as a trial he must overcome if he ever wants to reach the friend who lies far beyond his grasp. So, for Naruto here, beating Kakuzu, using his full potential in the Rasen Shuriken is something he needs to do if he ever even wants to hope that he can reach Sasuke. And this intense training rhetoric is actually a common theme, as Sage kind of alluded to. The super accelerative training is also a rhetoric that's used, but for this intense training, we could point at Fanbook 2 that says that it's been 3 years since Sasuke visited Orochimaru's hideout. Sasuke, who has matured considerably through his intense training, is becoming more and more determined to take revenge against Itachi. Sasuke's desire to take revenge on Itachi has grown even more. So we get this idea that Sasuke is growing even more in his hatred, and we know that his hatred also amps him, and this is something that's typically just attributed to his Kage Summit counterpart, as I'm sure Lightning Sage and myself will go into a little bit later. But it does work in other forms, such as the EMS, and even in these earlier forms his hatred is amping him just naturally, and so it's basically just amping his chakra, not really making him physically faster, but making his chakra capable of being used in making him faster, if that makes sense. So here's the thing, right? You basically have Naruto reaching a level of a Sasuke. Now there's two Sasukes we're taking into account. There's the initial one that he remembers. So you could say that, well, Naruto reaches that level, or, could be equal to that Sasuke, whatever you want to say. But perhaps this later Sasuke with more training, with intense hatred that's going to be amplifying that training, even if you say it's half of what Naruto's was whenever he trained, what was it? 6 months and 6 hours. So if you want to say, well, let's just tone it down to be less, you got like, you're still looking at some crazy numbers for Sasuke in terms of what his training is doing, plus it's being amped. Plus he has other jutsu. I think, both Sage and Lightning would agree that Sasuke's jutsu arsenal is just better than Naruto's at this point. Using things like Chidori Stream, Chidori Senbon, stuff like that. He's capable of using the summons later at this point too. So at the end of just this arc in particular, Sasuke is definitely looking more favorable in my opinion. So like if I had to order it, you would say that like Naruto is now relative to the previous form of Sasuke, which he has knowledge of, but this new form of Sasuke is certainly above Naruto, like pretty clearly. Not saying he's an entire, tier above or anything like that, but he's definitely above on that level. Now, moving on to the pain arc, this gets a bit interesting. It's not so nuanced moving on to the pain arc, because unfortunately Naruto gets much stronger. He gets an entire Sage mode amp, as you can imagine, and Sasuke gets weaker. Sasuke appears at the very end of the pain arc and he interacts with Obito, but we have literally no idea the difference in strength between that point and his Killer Bee fight self. And if anything, we have evidence to suggest that there is no difference really at all. Enough to at least change the verdict of this fight. So Sasuke going into the Killer Bee fight, I want to notice some tendencies that he does, and this should allude to why he's weaker. So notice how Sasuke fights in the Deidara fight, right? Notice on what he's relying on. He's relying on Snake Jutsu to counter the bombs. He's using his wings to fly, using Sharingan, Genjutsu. He's using Shuriken. He's using all sorts of stuff, right? He's using lightning style jutsu even. But if you go here, it's different. It's not like the Itachi fight where he uses 9 Chidori. What? You know what I mean? 9 Chidori plus everything else, Oral Rebirth, you name it, chakra for Genjutsu. Whereas here, he's using Taijutsu, Kenjutsu if you want to include that, and basic Genjutsu. Why? Because he doesn't have the output that he did in his heavy form any longer. This is something that Jugo directly states. So now Sasuke is fighting extremely conservatively, which is the same thing he does when he gets really fatigued, like the end of the Danzo fight. He starts to rely on things like this. You're basically just taking, like, say a heavy Sasuke, but a really fatigued and tired heavy Sasuke with no curse mark. That's basically what we're looking at here. So we could say pretty comfortably that he's weaker. Now you could point to a few statements, like you can look at Data Book 3 that says, he continues to grow in strength, but this is talking about Sasuke as a whole, and we know this is kind of alluding from the boy genius, which is what the statement starts off of. So it's talking about Sasuke from a kid to now, and it's like, yeah, obviously he's still growing, at least in that larger scale, but in terms of the nuances of the arc by arc, he's definitely gone down a bit, whereas Naruto's got an entire Sage mode amp and is now much stronger and is arguably one of the strongest people in Konoha right now, if not the strongest person. You could point to like Shikaku's statement for that, whereas what's Sasuke doing? You know, like, what's Sasuke doing? And even if you look at his tendencies to fight, like, yeah, let's look at his tendencies. So he's got, you know, the swords. Well, Naruto's falling, you know, 50 meters onto stalagmites right to the back. You know, he's like, oh, that kind of hurt. You know what I mean? So Sasuke is not going to be piercing Naruto up, slicing him, you know, like crazy. He could genjutsu him, but that's a bit of a different discussion. If you want to talk about genjutsu, Naruto in this arc has Ma and Pa by his side. He has Frog Song, which is an ability that people tend to give to Jiraiya. So let's just, you know, toss it on to Naruto, I guess, right? And even if you don't want to, but if you do, then honestly, Naruto might have the genjutsu route in terms of the advantage. He definitely has other aspects, like now he's more prone to summoning than Sasuke is, especially in that form. So overall, I think Naruto at this point is definitely just stronger than Sasuke, and kind of has to be stronger than Sasuke, narratively speaking.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually think, like, out of all of the matchup here, this one's probably the most clear-cut and probably the biggest stomp in one direction. Like, I think Sage Naruto is probably just ragdolling this version of Sasuke. The Kenjutsu attacks are probably not going to do anything against Naruto's skin. I think that the fact that he has, you know, the Sage Mode precog should really help him out in terms of, like, leveling the playing field with Sasuke's Sharingan precog. He also hits harder. He's got greater reserves, like Virtue was talking about. He's more prone to use his summonings. He's got more chakra for sure. And then even if Ma and Pa are not, like, right next to him or, like, on his shoulders like they do with Jiraiya, they could break him out of Genjutsu. But also, keep in mind, if Naruto gets hit with Genjutsu and one of those clones pops, or both of them do, all of that Sage Chakra is going to be sent directly to him, and it's going to disrupt his chakra, which would automatically break him out of the Genjutsu as well. So yeah, I think Naruto is just, like, packing this Sasuke up. But also, the one win condition I can think of for Sasuke with the Amaterasu doesn't really work here either, because even Gyuki is able to react to it, and it's pretty interesting when you look at the databook page for B that talks about the Gyuki transformation. It says that it's his strongest form, and that it boosts everything, including his senses, and he's able to raise his hands and block the Amaterasu whenever it comes in. So, and this is, like, totally ambiguous in terms of, like, who has better sensory between Gyuki and Sage Naruto, but I think that because so much emphasis is put on Sage sensory, that it's probably the case that Sage sensory is better than Gyuki's just basic sensory. We have way more, like, sensory feats with Sage mode, so it's kind of headcanon-y, but I do think that narratively that should be the case. If it comes down to a Rasen Shuriken, that's one tap GG. He counters the Genjutsu and counters Amaterasu, so yeah, I don't really think this is that close.
Look, there's also one thing that we also should totally include. This Sage Naruto is actually the strongest Sage Naruto, at least in these comparative arcs. You know, like, so you look at the Summit one, this Sage Naruto might actually be stronger. And I mean stronger insofar as how he is as an opponent, because he actually has multiple clones sitting at Mount Miyaboku to just regenerate himself. He has multiple more Rasen Shuriken. And Sage mentioned the Amaterasu, and an interesting point is, spoiler alerts for the next round, Naruto and Sasuke are going to be very relative there. So this Sage Naruto, who does not train at all, and even tries and fails, because he wants to train, but he can't, then should be relative. But then Danzo, who's also relative to Sasuke, for example, can react to the Amaterasu, right? Like, A, who's relative to Sasuke, reacts to the Amaterasu. So here you're looking at, well, Naruto's much faster. So I think what Sage mentioned about Gyuki should definitely allude to the fact that Naruto could react to this.
I mean, honestly, like, me and Virtue did a video on this topic, sort of, not too long ago. We were talking about, like, Sage Naruto versus the entire Taka team. It was already arguable that Naruto could beat the entire team, let alone this single Sasuke. And to backpack off the Amaterasu thing, just in case you think, you know, they're sleeping on it, like, yes, this is War Arc feat, but, like, Sage Naruto was able to react to the third Raikage, who was faster than the fourth Raikage, who was able to dodge Amaterasu being shot at him at point blank. If that's the case, like, Naruto's Sage mode should still be able to react to Amaterasu if he's already in Sage mode. Like they said, you know, if Genjutsu is a problem, Ma and Pa are there. Any of the other Toe summons could probably do that too, honestly, if they're already on the field. And speaking of summons, Sasuke does not have Manga now, so that's also going to be a problem if Naruto wants to use any of this. Though, like, at best, you can maybe say, like, he has the Hawk. I mean, granted, this is only, that'd be 5 Kage summon, but if you really want to stretch it, you can give him the Hawk. What's that really going to
Mondo is currently barbecue chicken, and the hog is doing absolutely nothing against any of the toads.
Like, maybe if
You have the 10 toad summons, and then Sasuke's like, all right, I know what I gotta do. And he summons the hawk. Lustig, all right. And they just start spitting out the oil at him.
something else that I think that people will overlook, and I talked about this with Virtue before, is that like Fukasaku's strength is no joke. He was able to pick up Gamabunta and throw him. Naruto's got everything he needs on the chessboard to beat Sasuke here. It's just, yeah, Zetsu may have been trying to like rage bait Sasuke a little bit, but this is also Zetsu who's been around the block a few times, to say the least. So I think you could probably take his word for it here that Naruto is definitively stronger than Sasuke here. So I think this one's a pretty clear cut and dry. But now, leading on into the next one, and I don't want to start. No, this one's actually pretty. I told Virtue before we start recording, like, honestly, this could honestly be a coin flip. This literally could go any way. I'll do my best to say who I feel like comes out on top on this one. Because this one is like, because if we're talking about narratively, yes, like they're 50-50 neck and neck. Naruto takes one clash with Sasuke and immediately comes to the conclusion that, yeah, we're both going to die if we fight. But the thing is, though, is that neither Sasuke or Naruto knows what each other are capable of. Like, maybe like Zetsu may have fed some information to Sasuke about Naruto's abilities, but we don't ever see that, so it's up in the air. But Naruto definitely does not know anything about what Sasuke is capable of. He doesn't know anything about the Amaterasu, doesn't know anything about Susanoo. So, like, Naruto is basing that assumption off of one clash. Now, I'm not saying Naruto is wrong here. Like, again, narratively, just from the way that Toby has talked to Naruto beforehand and the way that Naruto is speaking here, that like the two of them are going to be as even as they could possibly be. But the thing is, though, is like I said, Naruto doesn't know anything about Susanoo, doesn't know anything about Amaterasu. So while Amaterasu, when it comes to Sage Sensory, probably is still not going to be as big a threat, the Susanoo will be, and that's a problem. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the thing is with the summons, Monpa, and his Sage Jutsu, maybe you could argue of all of them together, they could probably break through Susanoo, especially if they hit it from the back, because we see that Danzo with his wind style attack was able to put some serious pressure on the back of the Susanoo. Then lies the problem of getting behind Sasuke, which is not going to be easy because this Sasuke was reacting to the Raikage's attacks at full speed with just his base Sharingan. And while Naruto in Sage Mode might have the reaction time on par with that, he definitely doesn't have the travel speed on par with the Raikage, at least not from what I've seen. So again, there's just so many avenues to lead to this being a 50-50 at best. Plus, Sasuke's got the Susanoo arrows, which are faster than Sasuke himself. So, like I said, his Genjutsu might play a factor here if Monpa are on the field. Depends on how Naruto starts to fight. If he starts to fight with summons or Monpa specifically, yeah, they could break him out. But if he doesn't, and even if he does start in Sage Mode, there's a really good chance that like he gets caught in Genjutsu and it's GG. So I'm 50-50. I would probably lean more towards Sasuke at like a 51% based off, honestly, when it comes down to it, just Sasuke being a better tactician than Naruto. Naruto at this point has been training his IQ, his battle IQ, definitely, but he's not on Sasuke's level here, like, at all. And so I think if Sasuke were to, fight Naruto for a while and get accustomed to how he's fighting, that Sasuke will eventually come up with a strategy to beat Naruto, but it will not be easy.
Yeah, I think the thing to highlight in this matchup is the equality between the two. So, like, look, if we were going to give it 55-45 for the final Valley fights, this is kind of the same deal. Now, you can go deep into the narrative about how ocular progression versus Senjutsu progression amps work, and if you'll notice, each time they're fleshed out, they're equals, and so it's the same thing here. They even go into the same mental state that they do in the last final Valley, and you'll see in different things like, if we fight, we'll die. And then you have the Road to Ninja secret volume guide that basically calls them equals. Data book 4 alludes to them being equals. So you're looking at like, we're trying to put a winner on a winnerless fight. And it's like some people might point to Naruto saying, well, I need the Nine Tails Chakra to fight Sasuke. But the thing is, this is more or less saying like, I need the Nine Tails Chakra to like fully conquer Sasuke through and through. And we know this because Sasuke even wants the EMS to eradicate Naruto. So it's like you can't really point to either of those to say the one's inferior to the other. So it's more like, okay, how do you want to view them stylistically? right? And so here's something to account for. We noted that the peak Sage Naruto that we know, unless you're going to say that the War Arc one's stronger, then you can attribute to that one, right? And of course, he does get stronger later. But in terms of Kage Summit Arc and Pain Arc, you're looking at the peak one being the one that fights Pain, right? And in terms of how he is as a fighter, because he doesn't have that 5-minute timer, he has multiple more Rasen Shuriken, he just has more things at his disposal. Whereas the peak Sasuke is, as I'm sure both Lightning and Sage would agree, is a bit more hypothetical, right? Because we see Sasuke developing, but the V4 Susanoo, the moment he opens it, he literally dissipates it like the same page, like literally the following page, it just crumbles. So we literally don't have a peak Sasuke. Like, we don't have a fresh V4 Sasuke. He's more of a hypothetical what if character. Yep. So if you want to say like, well, at their peak hypothetical, so like Pain Arc Naruto and a hypothetical V4 Susanoo fresh Sasuke, those two are relative. You're comparing more so this hypothetical Sasuke with the non-peak Naruto. So if that makes sense. So you might even be giving Sasuke an advantage even whenever you have to talk about this matchup, which is something to include. Now, if you want to say they're equals, here's something that needs to be noted. Let's say they're equals. What speed is Naruto equal to? Is he equal to base Sasuke speed? Chidori Sasuke speed? Is he equal to Susanoo speed? Skeletal V3? Like, what are we talking about here? So if it's just base Sasuke, then you have Sasuke who can go to a tier difference in terms of his actual raw speed, and you're like, well, Sasuke is much faster. So then if you say, well, he's equal in an overall combative sense, which means he can't be getting blitzed by the Susanoo, therefore he's relative to the Susanoo, therefore he might just be blitzing base Sasuke. We don't really know. Now, this is where the fight gets interesting, as if you say Naruto is faster, then Sasuke is kind of built to fight faster opponents. Like, you can look at the Raikage fight. And even though the Raikage sucks comparatively to the later forms of Sasuke and would get dogged on, we know that in that moment, though, the Raikage was faster. But Sasuke can still keep up and put defenses up, except for the Raikage is an idiot and will still go through it. But he can put those defenses up. He's kind of putting up the Enton at the same speed of a V2 peak Raikage. And you see a similar thing when you go to the Susanoo later with Danzo. So you're really looking at a character who might be inferior speed-wise, who's built to fight faster opponents. Now, look, if you don't think Naruto is, faster than Sasuke, then you're going to look at Sasuke being much faster than Naruto. And that's kind of just what you have. Now, that could be the case. You could say, well, he's much faster than Naruto, but Naruto's much physically stronger than him, right? Due to the Sage mode offering more of a raw power output, he's throwing the rhinos, whatever. He does have more raw power, snapping the rods of, Pain's rods is probably a better feat. You only have Sage mode users and Pain himself doing it, with the exception of Kakashi in the anime. This is why I just go with their equals. I don't really usually put a winner to it. I might lean like 5-5, somewhere with Sasuke. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really sure. I might lean towards a Sasuke just based on assertions, but it really comes down to how you interpret the comparisons in these statements, like the presuppositions of these equality-based statements and whatever.
All right, I guess I gotta be the bad guy, I guess. So here's the thing. I do think that they're narratively equals. I think that they're standing shoulder to shoulder pretty much on the same tier. I do actually think that Naruto has a good gauge for how strong peak Sasuke should be. The reason for this is because he's trying to track Kakashi and Sakura to get to Sasuke, and he's using Sage mode to do it. So if he's using Sage mode, which we know gives him like a visual view of the Fourth War battlefield, and we know it allows for him to sense things like chakra, I do think he's probably, and Kakashi's literally right next to Sasuke that entire time. So I do think he probably not only sensed what Sasuke's chakra output was in the final form, I think he probably saw it. And so I do think that Naruto, whenever he makes this statement about, if we fight, we die, he's probably using that information in order to come to that conclusion.
Sage right here is saying that, like, Naruto has knowledge of different aspects of peak Sasuke. So, like, he has knowledge of this fresh Sasuke, knowledge of a perfect Susanoo Sasuke. So he's kind of fusing them together in his mind in terms of who he thinks he's, trying to fight here. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so he should not only have, like, a good basis for saying what he says, but also the page that people refer to is, like, the big panel where it's like, we die, and it's, like, in red lettering, and it's a whole thing, right? But people tend to not scroll to literally the next page because a lot of people will say like, oh, well, that means if they fight right there, they die, which means that Sasuke has the edge because Sasuke's fatigued and Naruto's fresh. But if you go to literally the next page, the next thing that he says is, if you invade Konoha, I will fight you. Until that day, you keep your hate in check and throw it all at me then. I'm the only one who can handle all that hate. Only I can fulfill that duty. I bear the burden of your hate and I'll die with you. So he's literally, whenever he makes that statement, he's talking about a future time frame when they would fight. So I do think that he's talking about them at their hypothetical peaks based off of what they've already seen, or what he's already seen of Sasuke. So I do think that this statement holds a lot of water and is probably one of the more trustworthy statements that we get in the entire series. I actually lean Naruto here. Very close. Very, very close. But I lean Naruto because I think that when he's taking this into consideration, he's also probably taking into consideration the fact that he doesn't want to kill Sasuke, and so he would have to kill Sasuke in order to defeat him. So there might be a little bit of restraint there. But even if you take that away, it's like... People don't like when I say this, but Naruto is resistant to piercing attacks, right? Sasuke's best move at this point in time is either his Kagetsuchi, like Flame Control Amaterasu moves, or his Susanoo arrow. What evidence do we have that the Susanoo arrow can actually pierce Sage Naruto? I know that sounds insane, right? But like, he already has an inherent resistance to piercing attacks, and so I don't think it's unreasonable to say that like, it's possible Naruto might be able to tank the Susanoo arrow, which might be able to take that out of the equation altogether. If you don't like that, his Sage Mode Sensory should allow for him to dodge it at the very least. And then when it comes to speed, I do think that the Susanoo arrow and the Rasen Shuriken are pretty much relative. The reason for this is because we know later on in the war arc that the Susanoo arrow and the Bijou Bomb are relative. We see this whenever they're fighting against Chubito. And then we see that Naruto's Rasen Shuriken is relative to B's Bijou Bomb whenever they blow up Nagato's Chibaku Tensei. So I do think that these two techniques are basically on the same level. So if those two techniques are basically on the same level, that means that he has a counter for the Susanoo arrow, even if it's not like no-selling it with his Sage Mode durability or dodging it. Like the inverse of that though is like, do we think that the Rasen Shuriken could just blow up the Susanoo? We have no idea, and we have no point of reference to establish that. So I do think that they both kind of are stuck between a wall and a hard place, where I do think like they are equals, and so it's going to come down to a stylistic matchup and how that goes down. I think if Sasuke's out of the Susanoo, then Naruto just dominates that fight. Whenever Sasuke goes into the Susanoo, he may have answers for all of Naruto's attacks, so then it kind of becomes a war of attrition. And this Naruto doesn't actually have the clones on standby, so you could maybe argue that he should be able to just... Sasuke should be able to just wear down Naruto until the Sage Mode expires. But at the same time, we do see prior to this, and Virtue mentioned this briefly, but we do see that whenever he does try to train and he's interrupted by Sakura, that what he's training is his duration of Sage Mode. He's literally sitting down, meditating in Sage Mode with like snow piling up on him, and he's trying specifically to increase the duration that he can stay in Sage Mode. So you could say maybe he doesn't have that same limiter at this point in time. And then I do think at this point in time also the summons are a gigantic advantage because, again, Sasuke no longer has Manda, he only has the Hawk. So with Sasuke, at least confirmably at this point in time, we know later on he gets Manda too, but at this point in time, confirmably, Naruto has the better summons, he has the better physicals, in my estimation at least. He should be able to just deal with everything that Sasuke can throw at him, aside from Amaterasu and Kagetsuchi. And so long as you don't think the Susanoo just tanks the Rasen Shuriken, he does just have a one-tap GG with the Rasen Shuriken, and if Sasuke is not in the Susanoo, then it's definitely a one-tap GG. So I do lean Naruto here, like 51-49, very close. I do think that he's probably correct that if they fought, they would both die. But if I had to pick a winner, I would lean Naruto for all of those reasons.
I want to interject one because I think it will come up at some point because people are going to say like, well, you forgot that Sasuke still has Kirin. Now with this one, with this Sage Naruto, I actually think Kirin might not be as successful because especially if, like how Virtue said, if Sasuke can't prepare it ahead of time, then Kirin's not going to be as powerful, arguably. It's, it might be like half the size. If that is true, if you do offer that, then Naruto Sensory added on top of a Sage Art Rasen Shuriken, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but I think it's more likely that Naruto can at least deal with Kirin in some capacity, whether that's avoiding it or actually canceling it out with the Rasen Shuriken. Because again, Kieran's fast, y'all. I'm not sleeping on its speed. With the Sage Mode Sensory plus the Sage Art Rasen Shuriken, in some way Naruto at worst can cancel out or avoid it in some way. Maybe you can say, like, best case scenario in Sasuke's favor, that Naruto comes away with, like, damage from the aftershock or something like that. But I personally think that, like, Naruto should be able to deal with it.
So I do think Sasuke's only real win condition that would be anywhere near provable would be Kagetsuchi Flame Control. But outside of that, I do think Naruto just does have potential answers for everything else, whether it be tanking it or dodging it, including the Kirin. So, yeah, I lean Naruto here, like 51-49, but I think more realistically, they probably just both die. So that leads us into the next section, which is basically the end of the War Arc section prior to them getting their 6 paths abilities. Now, if you want to go kind of form by form, I do think they kind of trade off back and forth. Like, I do think EMS Sasuke is above KCM Naruto. I then think MKCM Naruto isn't equal to EMS Sasuke early on. And the reason for this is because there's a direct statement about Sakura standing shoulder to shoulder with, and usually that language, the shoulder to shoulder, that's the same exact language that's used whenever Kakashi says that Naruto has basically caught up to him. It usually signifies equals. That same exact language is used to describe adult Naruto and Sasuke standing shoulder to shoulder with one another. So I do think MKCM Naruto and early EMS Sasuke are pretty much equals. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my god, Sakura was not on their level.
I'm going to say right now, War Arc Sakura slept on. I'm going to say...
See the demon, bro. See the demon. Did a full video on that. You guys should check it out.
I always downplay War Arc Sakura. So, but for the memes too, like I'll be honest, like I'm not even trying to be funny here.
I do think those versions are equal. I think KCM2 Naruto then surpasses EMS Sasuke, at least in the earlier forms. And then once we get into their sort of final forms prior to the 6 paths awakenings, I do think that it's super interesting, but I would actually lean in the direction of Sasuke here. So what we're talking about here is BSM Naruto versus Susanoo Curse Mark Sasuke. The reason for this is I think that with Sasuke and Naruto, like, they both have these crazy powerful avatars which are capable of doing some insane things. The problem is they both have, like, physical relativity with both their physical strikes as well as, you know, the relativity of their techniques, as I alluded to earlier with the Susanoo arrow and the Bijou bomb moving relative to one another. They both now have Senjutsu, so there's no, like, Senjutsu advantage for one side or the other. So the thing that separates them for me is just the tactically superior mind of Sasuke. Like, I genuinely think that it would come down to, like, if they're equals in power, if they're equals in speed, they're equals in, you know, all of those things, then what it would come down to is, like, the difference between Sasuke's tactical mind and Naruto's unpredictable nature. And I actually lean Sasuke there. I do think that, like, having a tactical mind like Sasuke does just help you to overcome the unpredictable nature of somebody like Naruto. Because if you look at, like, all of Naruto's best feats utilizing his unpredictability, it's usually against people who are not, like, tactical geniuses. You know what I mean? Like, Kage gets taken over by Naruto's unpredictable nature, but she's kind of a dunce in terms of tactics. And you see that as a continuous theme. It's like, it gives him an edge over kind of, like, more layman type characters, but it doesn't tend to give him an edge over more tactically sound characters. So I do, and taking the anime into account as well, I think you kind of see this in the early parts of the Final Valley Part 2, where Sasuke kind of just dominates the early parts of that fight using his tactics, so Naruto's unpredictability doesn't really help him there. So I do lean Sasuke here, probably 55-45, just based on the fact that I do think they're physically relative. I think their output is relative. I think everything is relative about them aside from that. And so I would lean Sasuke here, but I do think it's up for debate.
I think I can mostly agree. Like I said, I think Naruto has the edge in the early starts of the War Arc. Yeah, it's kind of blatant when Sasuke looks at him a couple times like, this is Naruto with, like, this much control over this much chakra, and, like, how far has Naruto come? Kind of implying that, like, Sasuke still feels that at the very least Naruto will present a huge problem for him, because we know that what Sasuke's end goal is, Naruto is going to be a clear obstacle in that. So he's obviously worried about the challenge that Naruto is going to present to him. So based on the implications of it there, you can definitely say that Naruto is still stronger, at, you know, bare minimum, you know, not like a night and day difference, but Naruto still holds, like, crazy advantages over Sasuke. But here's the thing, is like I was kind of voting more towards Sasuke kind of in the same direction, but then I did think about it for a second. I'm like, Naruto has the ability to make some super clone that can be just as busted as the original. Granted, they do scale a bit lower depending on how many he makes. But right now, if it's on the ground without any like avatars, I think if Naruto were to make 4 to 5 super clones, that way he doesn't have to dispense so much of his chakra amongst them. I feel like they could do some serious damage to Sasuke without the big old, like, even if he's in like his half body Susanoo, armored Susanoo, whatever, I still think the clones could do some serious damage. But if it comes to like the full-on avatar, kind of like Sage meant, like Naruto only has half of Kurama, whereas Sasuke, there's actually more implications that he has the perfect Susanoo. It's just up to interpretation. If you feel like Sasuke does have the perfect Susanoo, then I do think that Sasuke does hold the edge slightly over Naruto. But I did want to bring up that fact that Naruto can make super clones, because yes, like they scale lower to the original, but super clones are still busted. But conversely, narratively, it's kind of played off as a joke, but more often than not, Sasuke doesn't really ever have a problem with dealing with Naruto's clones in a fight. So if you wanted to go off that, like, you can maybe still argue that Sasuke would still be able to handle himself against super clone. So but like you said, like, narratively, they're still like neck and neck with each other, with Naruto probably having a slight edge in terms of power. But like Sage mentioned, like, intellect can make the biggest difference. We see plenty of times both people who are like, from Sasuke to Itachi to Kakashi, that having a sharp intellect and a calm composure can more often than not win the fight, if you have the right tools at your disposal. So I definitely would probably lean Sasuke a little bit, 51-49 in Sasuke's favor. But when it comes to overall like raw damage, I'd probably still give it to Naruto.
Yeah, I do think just I'm sure Virtue is going to touch on this as well, but in terms of the perfect Susanoo, I do think like there are arguments to say that he might have it based on wrapping the Kurama avatar in it. However, it could also just be the true form. The reason for this is because, like, whenever Madara initially wraps Kurama in the Susanoo, it is just the true form, and then he uses the perfect Susanoo. So I do think, like, you could go either way with it. The only reason why I would hold back on saying that he definitely has the truth or the perfect, or like could use it in combat in any meaningful way, is just because we never really see it. And I feel like in the fight against Obito, if he did have the perfect Susanoo, that it would be incredibly advantageous for him to use it. So the fact that he never uses it whenever we know that Sasuke is willing to do that and kind of like go for overkill, or at least if he does have it, it's only like applicable as a shell to the Kurama avatar, as opposed to something that he can just like use normally. I know this is kind of contentious, and TG actually did a pretty good breakdown on this, talking about which way he leans, but I personally think that he at least can use the true form Susanoo, but the true form Susanoo is not something that's ever shown to be something that's like a combative form, if that makes sense. Like it's literally never used in combat in any meaningful way. Like even with Madara, he literally just coats Kurama in the true form Susanoo and then basically immediately powers up into the perfect Susanoo. So it's not something, and against the 5 Kage too, he like goes into the true form and they're like, oh my gosh, this is the true Susanoo. He's like, nah, there's another step, and then just goes to perfect. So I do think, like, even if he has the true form Susanoo, it makes sense that he didn't use it and instead used the humanoid, because it doesn't seem to be one that's like necessarily suited for combat in any meaningful way. Because if it were, I do think Sasuke would have been using it, and then the same argument works for the perfect Susanoo. Yeah, and I do think like the best argument for him having the perfect Susanoo, at least in the sense that he can coat Kurama in it, is that it appears to have like the feathering on it, like the feathered plates, like the perfect Susanoo does, which the true form doesn't have in that same capacity. So I do think, like, at least in that particular application of covering, the Kurama avatar in it, that could be something that he has, and I would say probably is. But I'm just not sure that it's something he can use in combat, or at least maintain in combat, because, again, if he could, why would he not use it against Obito in that moment? You know what I mean? So yeah, I would lean in the direction of Sasuke here for the reasons I listed. But Virtue, what do you think, bro?
Look, not to be like that one kid in class, but I just had my entire flow stolen. The only thing I was going to bring up. No, I'm kidding. You guys covered it pretty well. I mean, yeah, I think it comes down to if you think he has the perfect Susanoo, as in the full standing when he uses against Jubidara, then he just innately has a form beyond the one that was equal to BSM Naruto. So I think there, you just have a pretty clear-cut case that he should be the winner. If not, then I would agree with, your guys' verdicts of, what we're looking at, 45, you know what I'm saying, sort of thing. So, yeah, so I think it just comes down to how you interpret him having the perfect Susanoo. I actually don't think he has the full perfect Susanoo. I think he just has the true Susanoo. And I even think it's actually like a similar thing for Madara, because the people were like, well, Madara had the perfect Susanoo, and he was using the majestic attire, but this just presupposes that he has the perfect Susanoo. We don't know that for the final valley. We literally have no idea. And if anything, the page before that, we're learning, in the EMS, he's got, the skeletal form. So we really just don't know. And the main argument for, well, Madara does, and he has perfect Susanoo, and Sasuke does the same thing, presupposes that Madara has the perfect Susanoo in that instance, when we just don't know. So
it also presupposes the idea that, like, Sasuke, even let's steelman the idea that Madara does have it with EMS. It also presupposes the idea that Sasuke is as good with EMS as Madara was at the end of his, supposed life, right? So it's like, Madara had the EMS for probably much longer than what Sasuke did. Not even probably, definitively much longer than Sasuke did, because Sasuke had it for like 5 minutes at that point, and Madara had it for like years. So I don't think that it makes any sense to say, well, Madara had this, and so Sasuke should have it as well, unless you also presuppose the idea that just getting EMS grants you the perfect Susanoo, which is a totally baseless, unfounded claim.
Well, I think that's where we're like, because a lot of people will, if we're using both the manga and the anime, there's that scene like before Madara fights Hashirama for real. That's when he summons the perfect Susanoo to fight Madara with his EMS only. So let's say if we're basing off that, both the manga and the anime, then you could have different interpretations. And that's why, like I said, I try to argue for both sides, the people who think that he doesn't have it and the people who are convinced that he does.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we can move on to our next section in the final valley. And this one it has a lot of videos done on it. I touched on it in my How Strong is Sasuke video. TG did a big breakdown, like a year back and stuff. Even, Six has touched on it. So this is something that's really been touched on. But a lot of the videos are really just going over the minutiae of like, well, here's how it could have went. Here's how he could have performed better. But we do really just see how the fight originally went. And here's the thing, right? Naruto is probably the stronger opponent. And that's kind of just like, we're comparing two people who we saw fight, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? It's not like the summit where we're like, well, we know they should be about the same level, but this one could have an advantage. Here it's like, well, we saw their tendencies, how they fight, who's outright stronger, who's faster, how the techniques interact, how the Indra form Susanoo is able to take on 3 avatars at the same time, but then Naruto is able to use the Ashura avatar to equal it out. And some might lean Sasuke having an outright power advantage, by pointing to, the Bijou bomb being, covered like the Bijou Rasen Shuriken instead of it just being normal Rasen Shuriken. People point to that, and stuff like that. Or people might lean to Naruto having an advantage because Sasuke has the downward advantage in their final class, where he has gravity on his side. Whatever you want to say, I think the thing here is kind of just like the other final valley and the summit. We're looking at two fighters who are practically equal, and one is slightly stronger. Now, in this one, I would lean towards Naruto, because Naruto won.
That's a crazy take, Virtue. You're saying the person you'd want to fight is stronger?
What are we supposed to say? What do y'all want me to...
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, we saw the fight happen. Now, here's something just to make this a little bit more interesting, that I think is something worth noting. Is Sasuke doesn't have the random 10 tails level amp that he gets, that he doesn't just have stock. He absolutely gets mollywopped. Naruto does not change from the end of the Kaguya fight to that fight, like, basically at all. Only real argument is like the other half of the 9 tails, which is great, right? But he doesn't have that at that point in time. He doesn't get that until after the fight with Sasuke. So it's like, Naruto is the same guy as he was during the Kaguya fight, and then Sasuke gains basically a 10 tails level amp, and is like Naruto is contending with him. And then if you take the anime into account, Sasuke dominates the early parts of that fight, but then we get multiple statements and, you know, implications that Naruto is holding back. We get this in the manga as well to a certain extent. I actually do think that in the manga, and as Virtue mentioned, TG broke this down really well. I also think Virtue broke this down really well, that Sasuke does seem to have the like power advantage throughout a lot of the fight, being able to successfully damage Naruto's Kurama cloak multiple times and kind of overpower him. But then once they both kind of lock in and Naruto goes into the Ashura avatar, it's just blatantly equal. And then after that, you know, we see how the fight ends. So even if the difference is paper thin, it still is a difference that leans in favor of Naruto. So I do take Naruto here. This one shouldn't be contentious at all, in my opinion. Like, we literally see the fight happen.
Naruto won with him holding back, essentially. Like, it wasn't until the latter part of the fight where Sasuke's like, oh, you're starting to get serious now, are you? Naruto won with holding back at least half of that fight, and that was with him without having the other half of Kurama. Like, could you imagine if this was the hypothetical full Kurama? Like, forget about it. So, but yeah, I definitely lean towards Naruto. And again, I don't want to sound redundant, but as far like on the ground without any Susanoo, like Naruto didn't really end up using any of the super clones. He set some clones. Like he didn't like full on use like the super Kurama KCM clones that he could have made if he really wanted to. And so I think that also lends more credence to him, again, just holding back. But like Sage just said, like Sasuke was dominating, and a lot of that has to do with like his battle instinct, intuition, you know, his intellect. It was taking him far in that fight. I think we can all agree on that. So, but for the most part, yes, Naruto, you know, clear winner. Fighting with restraint still was the clear winners.
Yeah. I don't think there should be any contentions with this one.
Oh, I mean, I think we put all the nails in the coffin and walked it to the grave. Yeah, this is.
All right, well, there's the video. There's the full-length movie for y'all. Hope y'all did enjoy. If you've watched till the end, you are a champion among champions. So,
yeah.
I want to thank Virtue and Sage for being on the channel once again for this incredible video.
Well, thank you for having us, man. I mean, it's always a pleasure to get together with two of my best buds in this space. You know, if you guys haven't subscribed to Virtue and Lightning and myself, make sure to do that. Actually unsubscribe to Virtue. I have to catch back up to him.
Don't listen to this dude. Don't listen to it. Stop.
No, but this seriously is a pleasure. It's always a good time. So thank you for having us on, man.
If you haven't yet, please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll leave a link for both Sage and Virtue's channel in the description below. But thank you all for watching, and until my next one, Lightning Snow, out.